welcome to another episode of Chatty Broads with Bekah and Jess.
I will fall upon the wave and keep my eyes upon the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your
Are we gonna get flagged because we sound so good?
Yeah. Are we Hillsong?
I'm trying to remember the names of everybody. I'm like, I forget. It's been so
Wow.
long. I used to know the names of everyone.
So far.
I know. What
the
a
names
tragedy.
of the actual singers.
Oh, of course. Carrie Job.
Oh yeah. Okay, I didn't know that too.
Bethany something, I think. I don't
Bethany
remember.
Hillsong.
Bethany Hillsong. Bethel.
Bethany Bethel. Guys, we are doing something that has been long awaited by some of you. Some of you are like, shut the fuck up about your Christian walk
talking
again.
about your Christianity and your past.
We'll never stop.
That's part of who we are. It really is.
We are gonna just kind of give a Bible Broads update. I think it was 2019 when we first kind of sat down and talked about our journey through growing up Christian and where we're at with our deconstructing, where we're at now. And
I was so nervous, Bekah. Do you remember me?
I know, you had a really good reason to be.
I was, at the time, there was still a lot of involvement, especially family-wise, in the church, and I hadn't really shared a lot of that with close friends and family in my life who were still very much connected to the church.
Now, can you confirm this on the pod? That episode in particular had an impact on an actual real impact.
It changed. I'll just say this. I can't get into details, but it changed our life. In a good way and a bad way. In a bad way, because there was so much heat that we received and the amount of personal issues amongst our family. And it basically ended relationships that I would even go there.
My dad said my mom listened to it and cried for 3 days. She never really talked to me about it.
And you know what's so crazy is when I trust me, I went back and listened to it 100 times because of all the drama that occurred from it. And I was like, what did I say? And when I listened back to it, I felt good about it. I didn't feel like there was this slanderous energy. It was literally just
I didn't feel that way either.
Us being super open about this is how we were raised in an evangelical church specifically. And these were the things that we had a problem with. And these are reasons why we were questioning this and maybe walking away. And this is kind of where we're at. And it was just a really open conversation.
What does evangelical even mean?
Should we look up the definition?
Because sometimes when there's these terms, I don't actually know what they mean. And I'm like, are we using something as a catch-all, for I don't actually know.
Evangelical definition, oh my gosh, this is so basic. According to the teaching of the gospel of the Christian religion.
Okay, so maybe you would just say that does make sense because it's you are following through a rule or a guideline, the teachings of the Bible, where there are some denominations of Christianity where it's very kind of free for all, loose, kind of let's take the spirituality of Jesus.
Yeah,
and
I think when we had the first conversation, we were very much putting an umbrella over just Christianity, and there are so many pieces and sects of Christianity, whether it be Protestant, Catholicism, the church that I was raised in was considered non-denominational, which I think is kind of just a mix of certain beliefs.
I went to Foursquare and non-denominational. But yeah, there is so many different experiences because even Bethany, when we had her on last week talking, there were things about her experience where I was oh, that wasn't my experience at all.
Right.
Or I could relate to some things, but other things I was oh, that wasn't how my church was, you know?
So there's so many different parts and sects of Christianity, but when we had that episode, we'll include it in the episode notes.
Oh yeah, good idea.
But we talked about our experience personally, and my friend Valerie was on and talked about her experience. But man, there was fallout. And so in that way, it was, I'd say, negative, quote unquote, because it was really hard and it really affected our relationships. But the positive side of it was Evan and I had to have conversations that had been lingering for a really long time.
With each other? Or with other people?
No, we
With
were
other
on the
people, with
same
other
page
people,
with
okay.
other people, and we're able to set up certain boundaries. And even though it was hard, it really helped us take a turn in not only our relationship, but just kind of the way that we moved in the world a little bit, and not feeling like we were living in this kind of secret place amongst certain family and friends.
Oh yeah, and sort of code talking with people, like, yeah, you know what I mean, like using the lingo to kind of show that you're still sort of half in. No, I feel that way. I've had some difficult conversations with like my mom in particular over the last like 6 months or so. But it does give a lot of freedom because I was like, well, okay, she knows where I'm at. Like, I had a conversation with her actually when I was super sick at home, when I had like hand, foot, mouth over Thanksgiving when I was all alone. And I was on the phone with her, and I was just like, we were really just having a real chat just about like basic theology stuff, where I was like, well, no, like, it was the first time I'd ever told her, like, no, like, I don't think the Bible is like an infallible word of God. Like, I don't. So I'm not going to, like, if you're using scripture to like back up your point for something, like, that doesn't really like hold credibility with me. But I want to get more into this because I have so many. Anyway, so we want to talk about our kind of like where I guess we're at now. We've already talked a lot, I think, about where we've come from, and I would reference like past episodes to kind of dive deeper into that. Yeah,
if you're listening to this and you're going, what is going on right now? Like, just a brief summary.
Yeah.
Becca and I were raised in the Christian church, specifically for me, non-denom, for you, the Foursquare, non-denominational. And that was our upbringing, like tried and true. Our parents are still involved in it. And it affected our lives in a certain way. And
every single one of my friends was from a Christian family. Every single one. Pretty much all of my parents' close friends to this day are all of my closest friends from childhood were raised very similarly, very involved in the church. We talked about this on a recent episode where it was Jess, you were heavily involved in the church until your 20s.
Yeah.
I was not really personally, I was only personally really involved until my very early teen years, after which I was just kind of like attending church, and it was just my own family stuff. But anyway, what was really interesting to kind of think back on in that past episode is how I don't think we were intentionally dancing around how we felt. I think we just really didn't know where we stood on a lot of things.
Yeah, I'll be honest and say I was a little bit in the middle, because it was the first time that I was publicly talking about it. And like I said, I hadn't addressed it with a lot of family and people around me. So I was...
Did you feel like you were maybe omitting certain
No, I was
thoughts?
dripping in sweat.
Yeah.
Dripping in sweat. Yeah. And I wouldn't say it was like where I didn't have any moment in it of dishonesty. It was just more like I was tiptoeing around certain...
Let me put it this way.
Topics.
You weren't going to say like, you didn't feel comfortable making a big statement where you would be like, I do not believe in the Bible. Like, exactly. It's like you're just not going to say that. You're going to leave that part out. It's not dishonest, but you're just like, I'm not going to go there.
There were certain things that I was like, oh, this is already going to be just a hammer amongst my family. Totally. That there was just an awareness of like how I was verbalizing certain things. Yes. But the other side, the other part of it, I fully agree. And I felt the same way, where I just wasn't quite sure where I felt. Like, I had been deconstructing my faith for numerous years at that point, quietly, with Evan, but very much by myself as well, not with family. And I was just, using podcasts and books and trying to figure out where I stood. And I also was like really angry.
Yeah.
I was really angry. Like, I had felt like I had been so hurt. And I was realizing my trauma and how that had affected so many parts of my life that I hadn't realized. I was so angry at how the church had hurt so many people around me, whether it be friends who were coming out and them rejecting them, whether it be people who were getting abortions and they were getting cast out, like someone who was having sex outside of marriage. Like, I mean, everything, and seeing all the hurt and the really broken family relationships. And again, that was from where I was coming from. And that was so I was still bitter and I hadn't reconstructed yet. I was just breaking everything down.
I think that also something that's maybe a particular difference I was reflecting on recently. When were we talking about this recently? Remember? We were really chatting, getting
when you were talking about you interviewed me.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Yeah. So through your interview, I kind of, and by the way, I just want to give a heads up. We are going to be having a guest joining us kind of talking about his very specific kind of like religious, maybe cult. I'll ask him if he thinks of it that way.
Yeah.
Upbringing and kind of how he's gone through the same process of being like, fuck all of this. And then, well, actually, here's some pieces I might want to keep around in my life. And I think that that's going to be really, really fun to get into. So that's going to be the topic today. But anyway, so something I learned through my interview with you that does stand out between our two experiences, I think something very specific that your experience in the church and in your specific community that I think a lot of people can relate to is that there was a big part of your identity, not talking about sexual identity or anything like your identity, like who you are, that was really tampered and stunted by the community that you were around.
Say most of my identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the little things that make you you, not the
little and big, you know, most every piece.
Yeah. It's like, because I can really relate to like a lot of just small things where I'm talking about shame around just even things like just kind of Christian or Judeo-Christian concepts sort of around like laziness or productivity or of course sexual shame has been a really big one. But I think we had a different experience in terms of feeling freedom to be ourselves and live our lives. And so I just really feel for you and a lot of other people who I'm realizing have had this experience of like just not feeling the freedom to just be who they are. Not even about like being gay or being open about sex, like literally just little things about, I know you went through just stuff with like style, like just even personal style, just even how you talk about yourself and how you move about the world that was stunted by the community of people who wanted to dictate the way that you were supposed to be.
No, I really appreciate that. And I think, and we can get into this with our guests too, but I think something that has really happened in my life recently, and again, this is just my personal experience. Like, I think the beautiful thing about humans is that we're all in different places. So someone listening to this podcast might be in the heat of dealing with trauma.
Yeah.
Someone listening to this podcast might be like, the church saved me.
Yeah.
Someone listening to this podcast might be like, how dare they give someone the benefit of the doubt who's involved in the church? I mean, we're all in different places, right? And we'll remain having different feelings.
And we're all projecting our trauma all over the place to everyone and everything we listen to.
Of course. But for myself personally, since that podcast episode, I'm so grateful for it because even though it was like a hammer and it had a lot of rippling effects that were really painful for a while, because of the conversations, I feel like I'm in a place now in my life where there's still definitely the trauma, don't get me wrong, and the triggers. But for the first time in this past year, I would say that I am able to see the beautiful moments and also be able to have relationships again with certain people who I probably wouldn't have been able to be before because there was just too much pain.
Yes.
And they see completely through their still very evangelical lens.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have a conversation with them. And now I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I'm able to have, whether it be family or friends, that I'm like, oh, I can have conversations and like, I can still hear you and learn from you. And maybe you can hear me and learn from me too.
I think that that's a beautiful theme that I'm just seeing over and over again in this past year in my life and in just lives of people around me because this extends so far beyond the church. And I think that so many people have been in a space, whether it be in interpersonal relationships with the church or even just with the general population that sees something very differently and maybe in your opinion in a very wrong way, where we have not been able to even interact with them. You know, it's been a culture of, I can't handle where I'm at right now. I can't handle the trigger of where you're at in life, right? Like, I can't have a conversation with you. And I have so much hope that as we can all kind of heal ourselves, that we can move into that space you're talking about of like, yeah, maybe we're not going to be besties skipping through fields of flowers holding hands together, but maybe we could take a deep breath when we're in a good moment and say, you know what, I'm going to look past some of this stuff that I don't like, and I hope that you can do the same for me.
Well, for me, specifically, it's like if something's not, at least in my journey, I hate the word, in my journey through this, it's like if the person that I'm interacting with isn't doing anything to actively hurt another person, then and this helps you, this belief helps you, and you're not actively hurting anyone, you should be able to hold whatever belief you want. And at the time, I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
At the time, I couldn't do that because I had so many things that I was projecting from my own.
Well, it's a trigger. It's
trauma.
activating. It's like you get in this fight or flight mode where you're like, I can't.
Right. But even then beyond that, when there are people who are doing things that are damaging to people, I feel like I've been able to now, at least at this point, have conversations because I remember the people who were willing to have those conversations with me when I was so resistant, when I was so deep in this spot, again, my experience with the church, where there was so much judgment, just non-understanding of anyone's story outside of mine.
Yeah.
And there were people in my life who were willing to sit with me and hear me projecting shit all over them and be still with me and work through things with me.
It's so compassionate and beautiful.
And I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm in this space now where it's like, okay, I can, especially with certain family members, again, boundaries are necessary and I had to put those up. But now when I'm feeling comfortable, it's like, who else is going to have this conversation with maybe a family member about let's talk about abortion, like a conversation that they're going to be so resistant to, and they're only really hearing from one perspective, right? That I can actually sit and now have a conversation and be like, all right, let's like actually, this is inside. I'm going, oh God, you know, thinking of all those faces of friends and myself who have walked through this and, you know, whatever. But to not just be able to sit and have that conversation and be like, okay, let's have a conversation about the other side of this.
Yeah. And that's, and
I know you have your religious beliefs, but let's really talk about this.
Well, and that's when you've experienced like a level of healing in yourself, that also gives you the ability to regulate your own emotions and to make better choices in those conversations too, where you have the, oh man, yeah, you're really speaking to me because there's those times where you don't have that, you have very still raw, open things. And I have been on literally both those sides are arguing two different points where there are things that are raw and open and emotional, and I don't even have the regulation to stop myself from just tearing at someone. And then when you have healing, you have the regulation to even be able to say, I think we should, like, we are getting to a place where we're not going anywhere. We could put this on hold, but I really appreciate you having this conversation.
1,000%.
1,000%. That's on growth, baby.
Right. And it's on growth and like, oh God, I'm not saying that I figured it out. Like it's just a massive struggle still. But I just have been having a lot of flashback memories lately that I think I suppressed for the past couple years because they hit me too hard in the gut. Memories of
who you were,
who I was, and what I used to say, and what I used to believe by the way, so carelessly, because someone preached at me or taught me and I said, okay. And then I would hold firm to that with no understanding, no life experience, no conversation with other people. And I would hold so firm, and I've been having these flashbacks of, oh my God, you thought what? You said what? You believed what? And then remembering those people in my life who would have those conversations with me, who I am so forever grateful for, who were patient with me. Friends who had walked away, who I'm sure having the conversation with me, so triggering to hear their friend, you know, fighting tooth and nail about something when they've now seen this other beautiful piece and perspective and facts at the end of the day about some of these things.
But they love you, and they don't care that
me.
you're problematic. They don't care that you're saying shit that's fucked up. They don't care because they love you and
they were willing
about
to
you.
like go through the trenches with me. And it's, God, when I think back about that, it doesn't make me feel great, but it's just the truth.
But you know,
because it was how I was raised. It was literally all that I knew.
Also,
even though I will say this, there are certain things where I knew in my gut that I'm like, this is wrong. When I'm seeing other people being hurt, it was like, there's a problem here. But I just didn't know until I was older or given enough space to maybe explore how to have those conversations and
what the
work that out.
alternative is.
Exactly.
What the alternative is.
Right.
You're not seeing the alternative modeled. And I am so excited for this conversation and future conversations because I'm so excited. It just gets me thrilled. Because I just have been having conversations too with talking about friends. I don't know, like
an accent.
Yeah, this is just part of my method. I'm just practicing for a role. How I've been having conversations with some of my friends about how growing up steeped in this dogma and ideology, how it does give you a certain perspective to be able to recognize the dogma and ideology and go, maybe some of this modeling of like, you're sinful and you're not doing good and you must abide by these rules, or you are, these kind of things that I grew up with. Sometimes I'm starting to recognize it in dialogues we're having online. And I'm really excited in some future episodes to get into that. We have a guest who I'm just obsessed with, Clementine Morgan, who's going to be coming on in a couple of weeks and kind of talking about that specific topic. There's going to be a through line with that. But I'm just really excited to have these conversations because what you're talking about like seeing people is so cool and so powerful, I think, for the time that we're in right now. But anyway, that's enough on that. But anyway,
it's been a journey, and it's cool to have the podcast to look back on and listen to and kind of like remember, because time moves so quickly. Even just like, honest to God, like I listened to episodes from like 6 months ago and I go, I have a very different opinion about certain things, and just even with the episode that we initially did, I'm not saying that I have a different opinion, but it's just cool to have like a timestamp.
Or you're like, I wouldn't answer that question in that way anymore.
It's a timestamp to reflect back and be like, interesting. So, that was where I was.
So, you know what? Let's bring in our friend. And so who we're bringing on today is our friend Abby Roberge. And fun fact, we actually recorded an episode with him a long time ago and it got deleted.
There has been 2 episodes and they happened on the same day.
Yes.
We recorded with Abby and Quigley.
Yeah, and they were
both great episodes, and the computer crashed and we lost it. This was maybe like 2 years ago, but I'm excited to have this conversation with him now because there's been a lot of things I know that in his life
that have shifted in his own perspective. So let's bring him in.
But before we chat with our friend Abby, let's take a quick pause, broads. When your underwear is just right, it seems like the rest of your day kind of just falls into place. Am I right? When you're wearing soft underwear that doesn't pinch or pull at all and is breathable enough that you're not sweating down there, which if you live in a hotter climate, you know what I mean, okay? That right there is the start of a good day. And whether you're on board with my logic or not, you have to try out the best underwear brand ever, okay? You all know what I'm talking about. I'm obsessed. It's the only thing I wear. It is Me Undies.
Oh my gosh, Me Undies, they have thought through all the small details to make their underwear as comfortable as possible. Broads, it is like a cloud on your body. They're created with the softest micromodal fabric, available in a range of sizes from extra small to 4XL, and they come in quite literally every pattern and color you could ever want. And you have to check out their new and improved swimwear styles now that the weather's getting warmer. I love wearing Me Undies boy shorts anytime I'm lounging around the house. They're super comfy. They keep me super cool when the LA nights get sticky and stubbornly hot into the 80s, and they're pretty cute too.
Take this as your sign to give Me Undies a try. There's really no better time because Me Undies has a great offer for our listeners. For any first-time purchasers, you'll get 15% off. If you sign up for their free-to-join membership, you can apply that 15% off to their already discounted membership prices. Again, broads, I echo what Bekah says. It's literally like you're covered in a cloud. Okay? Me Undies is the angel underwear you need.
What are you waiting for? Get 15% off your first order and a 100% satisfaction guarantee. So go to meundies.com/chatty. That's meundies.com/chatty.
So many of us have made an attempt to switch to more natural beauty and wellness products in the past few years. But let me tell you, that can be a whole lot easier said than done. You know, sometimes those products, they're just not effective and they just don't cut it, especially if we're talking about skincare. If you feel the same way, don't worry because we have a brand for you. It's clean, it's effective, it's just the best. It's just the best. We are talking about Osea.
Osea, oh my God, you guys. They've been making clean, vegan, cruelty-free skincare products since 1996, long before it was a wellness trend. So I think it's safe to say they've pretty much perfected the art of creating clean skincare. I'm literally obsessed with their body oil. Obsessed, especially in the summertime. My skin is pretty much always dry, but it gets even worse, like going in and out of the pool and all that. So I keep the body oil on me constantly. It keeps my skin super moisturized. It's infused with seaweed. And really, as soon as I put it on, I swear, my skin looks instantly nourished and healthy. It's one of my favorite body care essentials.
Okay, like Bekah, my skin also tends to get dry as the weather heats up, but my new go-to Osea product is actually their body butter. It is the perfect texture, rich but not sticky, luxe but doesn't have that oily residue. I just lather some on after I shower and my skin looks hydrated and silky soft for days. Days, people. Honestly, go on their website, check out their products. They're all incredible.
Find your new skincare and body care favorites at oseamalibu.com and get a special discount just for our listeners. Get 10% off your first order site-wide, actually, with promo code ChattyBroads at oseamalibu.com. You're also going to get free samples with every order, and orders over $50 get free shipping too. So you're going to want it all. Go to oseamalibu.com and use code ChattyBroads, oseamalibu.com. Okay, we brought Abby into the studio.
Abby is here.
Welcome.
What's up, girls?
We were just talking about how your last episode got deleted. And
This is one of the saddest things ever. You and we had another guest that day, and both of the episodes got just trashed.
That's okay.
It was horrible.
It's better for me. You get to see the best version of me.
Well, that's what's so interesting. So we'll get into kind of your background, but I just know because I've listened to a podcast you were on since then, how so much of kind of your viewpoint and your perspective on your upbringing and the spiritual beliefs you were raised with, how much that has even shifted for you in the last couple of years.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Like
huge.
In a huge way.
Yeah.
So we were just kind of chatting about, in very loose terms, where we've come from in terms of our Christian upbringing. And so I would love for you to kind of get into your unique upbringing and how you were raised spiritually, religiously, lifestyle.
I guess the quick version of it is I was born and raised on a Hare Krishna commune, off-grid Hare Krishna religious commune. If you don't know what Hare Krishnas are, it's kind of like it's a religion originated in India. It's part of like the Vedic lineage, and it broke off into its own sort of practice that's been passed down for a long time. And then this guy Prabhupada brought it over to America in the 60s, and it became all the rage, and they popped up, and it was big, and then it died out, and then there was some crazy culty stuff that went on in different areas, but there was also some good stuff. And I was raised in like northern British Columbia, Canada, dirt roads, no electricity, nothing, like full on settlers. Like my dad like built the house with the trees.
How did your parents become Hare Krishna in the first place?
I think my mom was very spiritual, and she like got into it when she was like in high school. And she went to high school, and where she went to high school, it was like New Jersey during like when the movie Grease came out, I think. And so it was like if you're doing like chanting and Hindu stuff, like it is like a complete opposite fucking universe. Like high school nowadays, like you can do whatever. You know what I mean? Like you're actually like, it's actually insane to just be normal in high school nowadays. But she was doing that like back when like it's insane to do anything out of the ordinary. So she got into it. I think my dad did some acid, and that probably led him to, I mean, if he heard this, he'd probably be like, well, it's a little more complex than that. But I'll just boil it down to that. That's acid. A better story. And so then my dad was a monk throughout his 20s, and my mom was super religious, and then they met like doing Hare Krishna stuff. And then after my dad stopped being a monk, they got married. I think they had like a group wedding too. I mean, I'm just throwing his dirt out, whatever. There were like 3 people that got married at the same time as they like went down the row, which is pretty
right.
wild.
I mean, it makes it less complicated. Honestly, weddings can be a lot.
That was kind of big in the 70s. That was like the group weddings were a thing. Yeah.
I didn't
they
know
also
that.
like, so like I was actually born in a different commune than the one I grew up in. I was born on a commune that was in Pennsylvania, like rural Pennsylvania. So it was like surrounded by Amish farms, surrounded by like redneck farms. It was like the most bizarre
and then
little
you all were
area.
like right in the middle.
And then a bunch of crazy Hare Krishnas right in the middle of that shit. Like it was nuts. And like it was like the only cruelty-free dairy farm in America, which is pretty cool. My dad was literally like a dairy farmer. We like lived in a trailer and shit. And then my dad was like, I don't want to raise my kids around like a bunch of like racist, rural, like crazy Pennsylvania people. So he moved us to Canada.
Interesting.
And then they started this whole new thing. And the commune is more like autonomous, you know, it's more like a land holding corporation. So like everyone, like every other commune is run by the temple. This was kind of like run by the people there, which was great.
Right, because there's different types of commune where you're all joined financially.
Yeah,
exactly. Like there's definitely different ways to do it. But you guys were kind of more in a community.
Yeah, exactly.
sense.
And then there was people that lived communally within it when I was growing up, and like that was kind of cool. And like so I would go visit my friends that lived in like the kind of communal area. That was pretty cool. Like they had a lot like sawmill, like they would like make lumber. They had cows they would raise. They would like eat the food that they grew and cheese from the cows.
They were
and the
homesteading
dairy. Yeah,
it,
it was like full on. It was pretty wild.
Wow.
So, okay, how was your upbringing? Just like, how would you describe it religiously and spiritually? What were the expectations of you? What were the practices of the people around you? And sort of like, how did that shape your view of the world as a young kid?
I guess I was lucky that like I didn't have it wasn't pushed on me super hard, which was great. My dad was cool. I just grew up with my dad pretty much, and he was cool because he's smart enough to know that like you can't expect a kid to go on their own spiritual journey and come to it. Like everybody has to come to their conclusion. So he never really like forced it on us. But I mean, there was obviously like community pressure, and you're part of the community, so you do all this stuff to various degrees, and you do. They want everyone to chant. They want everyone to participate in the temple programs. They want everybody to quote unquote follow the 4 regulated principles. So that's no eating meat, no gambling, no illicit sex, and no intoxicants, like including caffeine. Like even that's an intoxicant.
What was the sex one?
no illicit sex. So I think it's like no sex like outside of marriage, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
That's one that gets debated. Some people are like,
Sure,
no
sure,
sex
sure.
not to procreate, no sex not to marriage. It kind of
no
depends
sex,
if
no
outside
sex
of marriage,
outside
you
of
know what I mean?
procreation. Okay.
Yeah. Some people say
Interesting.
that. Some it's a little
It's a little muddy.
whatever.
Up to
yeah,
interpretation.
everyone, but that's everybody.
Yeah, I was
All
gonna
the
say,
good-
I'm like, we're just talking
everything's
about
up
that
to
with Christianity. It's like
interpretation.
there's so many different versions
Oh
of,
yeah, you can be freaking Tony Soprano and like
Yeah.
a fucking
Yeah.
top-notch Catholic too. It's like everyone's got a different
right.
thing
Right.
too. Yeah.
So what did you call them? The tenets of
the
regulation?
4 regulated principles. It's
Regulated
just like the
principles.
base
Okay.
level rules you need to follow in order to be like mentally prepared to be spiritual. And then also basically the religion is the philosophy behind the religion is basically like we're born on this like endless cycle of birth and death, right? And and we're bound to this endless cycle in this universe. We're bound to it by our karma, right? And the goal is to practice a life in service of God, fully renounced in service of God, and to be released to this karma. So you can end this painful birth and death suffering and then just be in Godhead forever with Krishna and all the deities. And it's a whole other paradigm of thinking, and it's to be released from that. And so in order to get to that place, it's through like a lifelong practice.
What was your understanding?
Maybe there's a Hare Krishna listening. They're like, "What? You're a fucking idiot, dude. That's not how it is,
Yeah,
dude."
same thing with Christianity though
I know,
too, right?
it's the same.
like
It's the same.
different. But what's your interpretation of karma? Like, what's your understanding of karma? Because I have heard it like used in certain contexts all the time, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean necessarily?
That's an interesting point. Like, 'cause people say like karma, like, well, it's
Good
a
karma,
cause and
bad karma,
reaction.
right.
Do good things, good bad things. Maybe it's like a little more all encompassing of that. Is like anytime you act like out of God's will for the world. Like anytime you're trying to change God's will or something like that, you're bound. You're like resisting karma. So
Okay.
like when you're
So karma's
fully,
like destiny.
like karma is trying to, it's what binds you to. I'm making this up
that's
as
fine.
I
That's what I'm
as I
asking
talk.
for. That's what I'm asking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, your
So-
perspective of it.
Yeah, so there's like good and bad, right? And so karma, you're bound to this world because you have attachments, right? So it's you trying to force the universe into your own image as opposed to like God's image.
That's
right?
karma.
Yeah, that is acting towards bad karma. Like karma
Okay.
is to be in service of, like, good karma is to be like in service of Krishna or God and fully going with that. The bad karma would be like going against that.
Do you think
If
of
that
karma
makes sense.
Yeah. Do you think of a karma as like a collection of stones though, where you're like, here I'm collecting my good karma, then my bad karma. Now I
Yeah,
have
there's
two
some
good
people
karma.
that are like, yeah, it's like a spiritual bank account.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
right.
Like do a bunch of good shit so you
Right.
can go to Vegas on the weekend. You know what I
hopefully
mean?
it's
Like,
more
Sure.
than the bad
yeah,
karma.
exactly. It's like a bank account. It might be a little more complex than that.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure everything is, but yeah. And then I had someone recently say like, oh, my son, I could tell he was born with like a lot of karma. I'm like, what does that mean?
Right. Yeah. So it's basically like your soul is eternal, right?
Right.
So it's like your body is just the vessel that carries your soul that goes on. And so like, let's say in a bad life, if your soul did bad stuff, that gets carried on to your future life. You know what I mean? So like how you behave now will affect you in your future lives, and you are going to be the one experiencing those things. So you can't really get away with anything.
So is Hare Krishna about reincarnation on Earth?
No, the goal is to
not the
never
goal, but-
reincarnate again.
To be done to
Be done
eternal
with
sleep.
it. Exactly.
But otherwise, if you're
Be
not
in
there,
heaven, basically.
right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're not there, is it just reincarnation on Earth? If you haven't gotten to that place yet, if you haven't
It
achieved
depends. Depends. If you're real bad, you're like you get born as like a bed bug on Johnny Depp's mattress.
Yeah.
If you're real bad.
that, yeah. If you're real bad,
Yeah.
Okay. But were you raised with kind of that concept of like, oh, I might like have another life coming up?
Yeah, for sure.
Was that scary?
It was a little bit. Like I remember when I was 10 years old, I broke my arm. I was like, if I gotta fucking do this shit again in my life, like if I gotta go through all this bullshit.
You're like, I don't wanna hurt again.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we always talk
Yeah,
about that because I'm not scared of death. I am scared of coming back in a miserable existence. Like, I
Yeah,
like
that
my
sucks.
existence.
That's like one
Yeah.
of her biggest fears.
I like my existence. There's hard parts of it, but what if I came back in just a fucking miserable, like post-nuclear war survivor, just like shitty
Yeah,
life?
that's possible too.
That's like, so did you think about that at all?
Oh, 100%. Like, what if I come back a woman? Fuck.
Talk about pain.
Yeah, fuck that.
No, it's so funny that you bring this up because Abby and I were hanging out the other day and we started talking about, I said like my biggest fear is dying.
Oh yeah, we got real into our death fears.
I know,
and then we both got anxiety.
I know, and then I gave poor Abby so much anxiety. I was like dumping all of my fear, and I'm like, "Do you ever lay in bed at night?" He's like, "Can you stop?" And I'm like, "It's nighttime. You're gonna like send me on a spiral." But is that then? When we were talking about the fear of death the other day, is that based like from your perception when you're thinking about dying? Are you thinking about reincarnating, or are you thinking about like?
Yeah, how do you
what
picture
is
death?
it?
Like,
Yeah.
obviously you don't know it, but
Sure.
when you think about it, how do you think about it?
It's I don't know.
You don't?
I picture me and myself no longer existing, and like my ego, that's a little scary. And then I picture like the people around me suffering, and that's scary. But eventually they'll stop suffering. Eventually, like it all just
Oh, you mean
time
the people who
washes
loved
all.
you
Yeah,
suffering.
exactly.
The 3 or 4 of them.
Couple of them. Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, that's interesting because I think maybe I'm just optimistic, but when I do think about death, I do think about being in this like natural oasis with all the people I've loved, and we're just like smiling and laughing
Yeah,
in like
she's a
fields
beautiful-
of flowers.
Yeah,
and
that'd
it's
be
just
good.
like
I think about that too. Like I do think there is a point where it's like when you die, like it could just be like the most like amazing thing
Just
ever.
bliss.
And yeah, exactly. Like, and I watched a video of people that like who died and then came back.
near-death
and stuff. Yeah, that
experiences.
stuff's really
Yeah.
interesting. They're all like, yeah, it's fucking awesome. And then there's a couple people are like, oh, I didn't like that. I didn't like that one bit.
That's
you
the
know
thing
what?
that scares the shit out of me watching the near-death experience videos, because I'm like, I would say like 90% of them are like, wow, that was so beautiful. And then there's like the handful that have a horrifying experience. And I'm like, what if that's...
But hear me out. That's like DMT and acid.
know,
Like a
I
lot of
know.
people,
Yeah.
some people are like, "Oh my god, I want to do that again," and then
That's
there's
true.
people like me that are like, "Oh god, like that was horrifying."
Right,
Which
true.
I think all just kind of comes down to like release. Like I'm sure that if you're at a near death experience and you're like fighting and you're like,
Yeah.
"Fuck this," you're probably gonna have a hellish experience. If you're like,
Yeah.
"I surrender,"
Well, that would be me. So
Pretty much
horrible
like-
experience.
probably me
Pretty
too.
much like every culture throughout the world, aside from like America and especially in India, they just death is just as natural as like birth. It's just like something people accept. It's like it's just part of the process of this existence, right?
Yeah.
And so when I talk about like karma binding you down, that's you resisting. That's you fighting. That's like, oh, I don't die. It's like, sorry, you can't control what's like already gonna happen, you know? And then karma's like doing shit that's bad because you're trying to like force the world in your image, kind of.
Well, let's be real. Actually, I think I've talked to you about this before. Like, I think that all of that does come down to cycles and how we, like, especially in our culture in the US, are like so disconnected from every cycle, from the cycles of our food to the cycles of the season to the cycles of all these different things to even the cycles in our own bodies. And we distance ourselves from like the pain and the uncomfortable parts of like birth and death, like as much as we possibly can. You know, like
Oh yeah, 100%.
most of us have not even ever taken care of someone who is close to death, and that is like in every other culture and in the history of the world, that's what you do. Like what else?
Yep.
What other option do you have? So I think that that's definitely a different perspective too.
And even with our food, you
yeah.
know, everything's just there, packaged, processed. There's just no connection to death in any form whatsoever.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Our I was just telling a story on my Instagram the other day because we lost our chicken, and then Gray I was like, go put up a sign, and he was like, no, fine. And he put up a sign, and then literally the car behind him honked and was like, we have your chicken. And so we went to their house, and it was like, yeah,
That's
it was
that's
That is
insane.
so wild.
yeah, it was. I was like, I told you to put up the sign. I knew it. So it was funny because it was like this elderly Asian couple, and she was like, I was keeping the chicken and I was going to cook it and like make a meal with it. And he's like, oh, well, we'll give you some of the eggs. Like, and she gave it back. But then people on my Instagram were like, what? Like, I would never find someone's animal and just think to eat it. And I'm like, well, because you go to the grocery store and pick out your food. And you grew up in a country or in a culture where you had to kill your own food. That's a pretty natural thought process.
That bothers me so much when people are like, and I'm a lifelong vegetarian, but I'm like,
you've never eaten meat, right?
Yeah. And so when people are completely unwilling to like, or they have some sort of like moral obligation against like hunting or something like that, I'm like, don't you eat meat?
Don't you eat like tortured animals?
Yeah. They're like, I only like my animals to have a miserable life the whole way through, and then a bunch of chemicals put in them. Otherwise, that's fucked up.
So back to like kind of your religious and spiritual upbringing, what kind of were some of the practices in your community? What were like, and what I know you said that your dad was not about forcing on you, but were there expectations of like, you're going to attend this service or like do this specific practice or like that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I remember like the first 10 years, I was just kind of went along with it because I was just, I didn't even growing up with it. I was like, what the fuck's going on here? You guys are weird. Like even I was like, I don't get it. This is, and I'd be like, and I'd ask people to explain it to me and they're like, you just do the thing. I'm like, okay. And when I was 10 years old, this kind of like new guru came to town.
Okay.
Got everybody fired up. But he was also sort of like against the organized religion aspect of it, which kind of divided the community, which is wild. And so I'm a kid seeing all these like full-grown adults like bickering with each other.
Interesting.
So that was kind of bad. But I guess like I was a kid and all my friends got really fired up into it. So I got really into it. So we'd like go to all the lectures and we'd sit and we'd like listen and we'd watch. And I got like quote unquote like initiated, which means like I had to chant rounds every day. So you chant a mantra on these beads 108 times, and you turn it around and then you bring it back. And I'd try and do like 16 a day, which takes like, it's like over 2 hours of meditating basically of chanting. And on certain days you fast, you don't eat food depending on it. They go by the lunar calendar. So like all the festivals and, major days and stuff like that, you fast, you don't eat food, or you fast till noon, depending on what it is, the significance of the holiday. And I guess like Sundays you do kirtan. I mean, you can never do too much, you know what I mean? And I was only really into it for like a year though, and then I went
as a kid.
Yeah, and then I went back into casual life.
Do you know just out of curiosity, do you know when the origins of Hare Krishna are? Like what century? Is it like really, really, really old?
5,000 years old.
Oh, really?
Well, I guess Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna comes from, it's like a lineage that's been going back like 500 years of the teachings of Krishna consciousness. And there's so many different philosophies that all stem from the Vedic philosophy, which is scriptures that have been around forever, but
like the oldest of scriptures.
Yeah, they're like really ancient, and but the Hare Krishna's has been around for I don't know, like 500 years, like this specific form of
this iteration.
Yeah, and like 500 years, I think. There was a guy named Lord Chaitanya, who they say was like a reincarnation of Krishna, came to India and started preaching this philosophy of like a more intimate relationship with God, with Krishna. And that spun out into Krishna consciousness.
Okay, so...
Also, I'm not a representative of this. I'm just a fucking dumb comedian who grew up around it, okay?
We brought in the Hare Krishna
expert.
You're not trying to convert us right now?
No.
Okay.
There was a pause in that though.
Yeah,
for a
that
moment.
was
Yeah,
I was thinking about it. I was like, I could start the cult right now. I could do
you can do it.
Start right here.
Start my own spinoff right now.
We're setting it up right here.
Exactly. And you girls have followers, and so it'll just spread real quick.
It's like an MLM.
Exactly.
Yeah. We'll just bring on people, and then they'll bring on people.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And
Okay.
it doesn't cost too much to join.
No.
Just
It's free. You can do it.
Well, I ask because, there are certain like Scientology where you have to pay to play in their religion.
Well, my parents lived out of a van and made like $1 million cash and gave all of it to the temple. And
They
then we
made $1
grew
million
up poor.
cash?
Yeah, like doing like just hustling.
Wow.
Well, and they gave it all.
Gave it all to the temple.
What did the temple do with it?
I don't know, probably stole it.
Probably embezzled.
I don't know. No, I don't know. They built temples and ran the place and it's still going, so that's good.
Okay, so you said that, you were pretty casual about it and whatnot, but I guess like what impact did it have on you growing up? Like if you could contrast it to someone who maybe had no religious upbringing growing up.
Interesting. It was definitely the weirdest childhood. I mean, like when you're a kid, everything's normal,
Sure.
right? Like when I was in Hawaii, I was like, I asked people like, what was it like growing up here? They're like,
They're like, it is my life.
It's just normal, right?
Right.
It just felt totally normal. I started from a different place as everyone. Like I thought this was it. And then I was like, wait, other people have other ideas. So that was interesting. And then what was the question again?
I guess like how did specifically Hare Krishna, like not just kind of the growing up in a rural area on a commune, like I guess with the teachings of Hare Krishna, how do you think that like influenced who you are and how you grew up contrasting with someone who had no religious upbringing?
Oh, it made me cool as fuck.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. I'm actually like super happy about it. It gave me some sort of like spiritual foundation young. And if you asked me that a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have said that. I said it's fucking bullshit, it's whatever.
Right.
How does it change me? It made me feel a little different growing up, obviously. Like when I moved into the city at the age of 13, like I felt very disconnected and different than everybody. But I'm also grateful I didn't grow up in just like general population of like no spiritual yearning or understanding of anything.
Do you feel like it gave you maybe a little bit more existential security in a way?
That's a good question. Not really.
No,
I wouldn't say so.
What do you mean then when you say it was like a foundation for like spiritual thinking?
It was great because I got to consider these concepts and discuss them at a very young age. So it helped me, I don't know. So like maybe like if you start thinking about these things at a young age, those ideas that you ponder on, you don't stop considering them. So it gave me a head start. So that's why like I'm 30, but I'm so wise. You know?
I'm so advanced.
I'm just so spiritually advanced. And if you want to Venmo me $500, I can share that with you.
Yeah. Well, I kind of understand what you're talking about because I was thinking about it recently because I am much more open even just to the ideas of like energy and, like even just like spirits and like ghosts and shit like that.
Yeah,
like, I'm just more open to it because I'm like, why not? And I have had certain spiritual experiences growing up and have witnessed adults who are very like open to the possibilities of those things, who have shared those experiences with me, who I do trust. I was talking to Gray about this the other day, my boyfriend, because his parents grew up Catholic and, I went to did a confirmation, whatever, but didn't really have.
But they weren't like super practicing.
Yeah, and he just was not. We just have a different upbringing and different perspective on things now. Because I'll be like, no, like I fully fucking believe like that that was a ghost or something that people. Oh, I know what you're talking about. The other night, I was like, no, there are certain people that can like see the future, and like that's what's fucking crazy. He's just like, what are you? He's just like, what are you talking about? I was like, you never met someone who like prophesied something that was going to happen to you, and it like exactly happened in like very specific detail. And he's like, no. And I'm like, oh, well, the difference is I was in communities where that was like acceptable.
Yeah.
Which shit can get weird and bad in that, but then also like I was exposed to at a young age. Like, no, there are absolutely people who have have like spiritual superpowers that they like
100%.
can use to tap into a different dimension.
Yeah, and if people don't introduce that idea at a young age, there's no way you're going to be open to other ideas. Like,
you're also not trained to recognize those moments
Yeah.
as a child. Because let's be real, like part of it, now I'm getting really woo-woo,
Yeah.
but part of it's about training too. Like if you have not been attuned to certain like gut instinctual things
Yeah.
or sensing certain energies in people and rooms, like it's just going to take more practice as an adult and it's going to
Yeah.
be more difficult, right? Like,
I think if I grew up in the city just like totally regular, and if somebody tried introducing another idea to me, I'd be like, you're out of your goddamn mind. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not even going to entertain this insane idea.
okay, so what about the opposite? What about when you moved to the city and you had grown up like
Okay.
this? Did you feel that way towards the normal ideas?
A little bit. I was
Yeah.
just like, I've always, one thing that I'm really grateful for is I've always viewed kind of overall society, like I've always seen through the illusion a bit.
Okay. Yeah.
These evil fucking forces coming at us from every angle. I've always seen through that fucking bullshit since I was young. So that's how it's benefited me, to answer your question. All this evil. So I like how you're talking about how you're more interested in it now, right?
Yeah.
And then you went away and sort of came back.
Yeah,
and
so
you both did that, right?
I'm just my particular experience. I wasn't as Jess was. We were just talking about this. Jess
Yeah.
was really involved in like this church community until like early 20s. I was as a teenager. Like I think I probably wasn't super into being a Christian in starting my early teens, and so
Yeah.
like I'd go to youth group, and I'd be with boyfriends. I'd be like, no, we shouldn't have sex. No, like,
no,
next
let's
time we'll
not.
try again. We'll try again.
Right.
But, and so I definitely still had a connection to like, oh, this is the right thing to do. Like I had not gotten to the point where I was like, this is all fucking bullshit. Like, no, not by any means. But I was just like, if I don't live my life to the tenets of Christianity, I got plenty of time. I got lots of years on earth to do. That was kind of my thing. It was kind of like whatever. But then in my early 20s, especially like dating people who had absolutely no like Christian or spiritual or religious upbringing at all, I did kind of have a grieving period where I was like, holy fuck, like I don't think this shit is real, and like this is so upsetting.
Yeah, I went
and
through that.
like this is my home, like this is my family, my home, like everything I've known
Yeah.
falling through my fingers.
Yeah, I totally can relate to that. Where I'm like, wait, is everybody I grew up with, are they like dumb? Like, are they a bunch of idiots? Like, am I smarter than them because I know what's going on and it's not that, and they're idiots? Like, fuck, like that's so arrogant. I just realized. You know what I realized as we were talking and as you were talking about that is the lowest point in my life, which is probably 18 to 23, which is kind of everyone's lowest point.
Sure,
like that's kind
I
of when you
agree.
fuck
Sure,
up. But that's also the point where I had like zero God in my life of any form. You know, like 18 is when I'm like, fuck all that shit. I'm fully like atheist, like doing my own thing.
Is
And
that the
then
point you got? This point you got to?
yeah, I'm just like not into
Ching.
any form of it whatsoever. And then at 23 is like when I got sober and then started like my own sort of spiritual path and which like through like AA, which is basically like a Christian almost thing, or through a 12-step program, which is kind of like, it's like built, like has the whole Christian aesthetic and the Christian philosophy.
It's
behind
based
it.
on this Judeo-Christian God.
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Well, it's actually any God. It's kind of plug and play to any religion,
Okay.
but it was like made by a bunch of Christian people. So you'd say all like the same prayers and stuff. And doing that is like what has led me to the point where you're at, where I'm like, I'll do fucking crystals, I'll do Reiki, like I'll do whatever. Like I'm all into the Hare, like I like the Hare Krishna stuff now. I'll go to church, like I'll do whatever. Like I'm totally like open to all that shit.
What point did you say, like, what got you to the point where you're like, fuck this? Like, and that kind of that arrogant point, like you were saying, or like,
Yeah,
damn, I know it and they don't.
Did it start? Like, did it slowly start to happen once you moved to the city and were kind of exposed to
No, once I
different
moved to the
things?
city, we still like we lived on the temple property, and I still went to the temple. Like
Okay.
I was like even when we moved to the city till the age of like 18, I was like still into it. I think it's when we moved to another city where I didn't have any contact with Hare Krishnas
Oh, okay.
that I was able to just hang with people. And then part of it was just me trying to fit in, so that I didn't really like acknowledge it and talk about it. I was like, I just want these people to like me. Like these people aren't gonna like accept me for this like fucking weirdo. Which in hindsight, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
And then that's when I was just started being like, I think these people are a little nuts.
Can I ask you now? And I don't know. You're not bringing it up, but I am. But like, you had a serious loss in your life at like 17, right?
Yeah.
Like your mom passed away
Yeah.
when you were 17. First of all, how did you conceptualize death in the face of that like super heavy loss? And did that then shape that kind of shift in thinking going through that?
It didn't, to be honest with you, like losing her at 17, it's like took me like many years to even process it
Yeah.
whatsoever. Because I also had I really suffered the tragedy of losing my mom at a much younger age, like when I was 2 years old, because of mental illness and because she was institutionalized and just kind of wasn't a part of my life growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So when I lost her, it was like, even to this day, it still sort of hits me, and I still am trying to figure it out. It didn't really make me process death any differently. I don't know, but I definitely do feel like some people say, you're dead, like that's it. There is, but I also believe that like, that there is, she is there sort of helping and guiding, and, you feel her presence and stuff like that. And like, oddly enough, like really good things always happen to me on Mother's Day, which is odd. And like, it's interesting.
So when she first passed away, how did you think of that in terms of your upbringing? Were you like, oh, maybe she's on to another life? That's what I was curious about.
So you know what? Part of that I think was, that's a lot where like a lot of my resentment started, I think,
Okay.
Because I was like, well, she like gave her whole life to this movement and these people, made all this money, did all this stuff. And then as soon as she was like crazy, quote unquote, mentally, I felt like everybody, so they like kind of turned their back on her a bit. And so that was like where my resentment started, and I'm just like, and then I was like, maybe that the whole religion thing like fed into it, like, and then I just started questioning all that stuff, and then other things happened, and that's like where the resentment started, and then that resentment slowly built out into like an overall deterioration.
Okay, so
Damn, do you want to be my therapist?
yeah, I could do it. At what point did you feel like your resentment? Now I'm really digging into you. What point do you feel like your resentment was really at its peak, where you were really like angry? Did you have that point? I guess I'm assuming that you got to a point where you felt angry.
Maybe not angry.
Like maybe that's us projecting because we get
Maybe, yeah. But did you ever have a feeling, kind of these feelings of like, dude, fuck that?
A
like,
part of me when I think back to myself when I was 19, is like, I'm like, was I the dumbest, most vapid fucking idiot of all time? Because I was just like, I get Facebook memories, like Facebook statuses.
Oh God, what a nightmare.
From that time. I'm like, you want to ask me about what was going on spiritually?
in 2011,
Yeah, my Facebook status is like, getting this money. And I'm like,
You're like,
I'm like, I had a minimum wage job. Like, why would I just post is getting money? Like, what the... And that's the
reason
guy?
I deleted Facebook. I was like, I cannot hold on to these memories. I can't become face to face with my old
It's so funny when I think about like having these spiritual revelations at that age.
Okay, broads, one more quick pause. Is there anything better than getting a compliment on something you're wearing when you're out and about? No. There's nothing better. The easiest way to put a smile on anyone's face is by dishing out a random compliment, and we can all admit it. There's that one item in everyone's closet that you just know is going to get a compliment. For me, it's any pair of shoes from Rothy's, without fail. If I wear a pair of Rothy's shoes out, someone somewhere is going to give me a compliment on them, either because they also have a pair that they love or because they don't have a pair but want one. And you know mama likes some affirmation. Thank you, Rothy's.
Oh, it's really no surprise that Rothy's brings in the compliments. They are super stylish. They go with literally every outfit, and once you put them on, it's game over, baby. And Rothy's are hands down the most comfortable shoes I own. It's like they were specifically made for your feet. But even beyond the comfort and the versatility, of course, Rothy's surpasses all of the shoe companies because of their commitment to sustainability. Every Rothy's product is knit with thread made from plastic water bottles, which has allowed them to repurpose over 125 million water bottles so far. Unbelievable.
I've been loving their slip-on loafers lately. They're the pair of shoes that are always by the front door. You know that pair. The one that no matter what I'm wearing or where I'm going, I can always count on them to work for the occasion. So keep them by the front door so you can slip them on in a moment's notice, okay? Those are Rothy's.
Your new favorite shoes are waiting. Discover the versatile styles you can wear absolutely anywhere and get $20 off your first purchase at rothys.com/chatty. That's ROTHYS.com/chatty for $20 off your first order.
So for a lot of my life, I thought that buying clean, healthy products for my home or for eating, whatever, always meant that I was going to be spending big money. Blame it on the clickbaity articles showing wildly priced snacks at boutique grocery stores or big brand marketing tactics, but I was seriously convinced that the only way to buy good for you products was to blow your whole paycheck at the grocery store. But I am happy to report, I now know that's just simply not true if you're shopping at Thrive Market.
Oh, I love Thrive. Okay, so Thrive Market is the online marketplace on a mission to make clean, healthy living accessible for everyone. So when you sign up for a Thrive membership, you're going to get access to thousands of cleaning products, all at a discount. Oh, not cleaning products, clean products. Sorry, clean products. They do have cleaning products too, but they have literally every single room in your house covered. They've got pantry staples, baking goods, healthy snacks, clean beauty products. Literally, you could do all of your shopping on Thrive Market right from your couch. And you can even shop items specific to your lifestyle using over 90 different filters from their site.
For example, let's say you wanted keto-friendly chocolate snacks that were also zero waste. Just select those filters on the site and boom. All the options that fit those choices are pulled up, ready for you to shop. I get so many things from Thrive Market, primarily the cooking essentials, lots of snacks, because we are a snacking family 100%. Thanks to Thrive, I've discovered so many new healthy snacks that have turned into our family's favorites.
Can your grocery store do that? Join Thrive Market today to get 40% off your first order and a free gift worth over $50. That's THRIVE market.com/chatty to get 50% off your first order and a free gift worth over $50. That's thrivemarket.com/chatty. thrivemarket.com/chatty.
Because I look at that person as just like an idiot. I'm like, maybe I was spiritual because I'm like, I just want to fucking, I don't know. I just get drunk. I just hang with my friends. Like there was zero spiritual yearning, I think. But possibly a lot of that was just like suppressing any of that shit and just purely trying to live on just like the lowest vibration. You know, I think like some people live bad lives, so they just want to live on a low vibration. They want the small talk. They want to push feelings down with drugs, alcohol, and food, and they want to watch basic shows. They just want to like just live.
Well, it's kind of neutralize, right? Like we can kind of neutralize everything, the highs and the lows, if we kind of keep it here.
Yeah, it's like I'm not going to have bad feelings if I'm just like,
right,
just being a simple idiot, you know?
Well, I always wonder too, like for those of us who are raised with religion from like the get, most of us always have those series of years, if they don't last for the rest of our lives, but those series of years where I think we, like you're saying, have to operate at a low vibrational level, almost because we've been forced to try to operate at a high vibrational level since the day we were born. Like trying to be spiritual with everything 24/7, I think sometimes as a kid can be overwhelming because you're not having those moments of almost being able to be like being allowed to test different vibrations and test different places. And so it's almost like you come to a point where you're like, I kind of have to turn it off for a second because I've been trying to operate at this peak where I'm thinking there's 20 levels to everything always. And I need to just kind of turn my brain off. And I think sometimes it's then hard, at least I know for myself, to not then stay there.
Did you have that experience?
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%. I think that was, I hadn't even walked away from the church yet at that point, but it was like, I was still going to church, but I literally turned off everything. Like that was when I was, partying way too much and my life was just full surface level.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had to a certain degree, like maybe not the consumption of alcohol or whatever, but I had to just be, I don't know, just surface.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that led me
know.
to unhappiness. That led me to being an alcoholic.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I didn't go through a specific period, but I feel like there were certain ways where I would like numb myself, like with dating, with boyfriends and stuff, with like having
That's
a
a big
person
one.
by my side to give me affirmation and validation so that I didn't have to like look within myself and like look at myself and process through all these feelings of like unworthiness I had that were tied to like religious guilt of not doing those things. Cause I still to this day experience so much guilt about like watching TV, about just zoning out and not doing anything. It plagues me. Like I feel so much shame around like wasting my life, like wasting my time away.
Yeah. You're an ambitious person though, right? So I think you're always going to feel some guilt with everything you do. Like I work out twice a day, 7 days a week. I fucking do all this shit and I'm like, oh, I'm looking at my phone too much. Like, what the fuck? Like,
You talk about that. I'm like, dude, you're doing something 24/7.
Though in processing through this therapy I'm doing is calling brain spotting, like in processing through that, I have though noticed that it's not necessarily a byproduct of ambition. It's much more, for me at least, a byproduct of religious upbringing that because your time is given to you, which I do believe it is, you must not squander it. And then the squandering is the part that's a very specific term that is relative, right? But like in religious upbringing, to squander it is to do things focused on your own pleasure. And that's across the board in lots of religions. I'm sure in Hare Krishna too. In the pursuit of debauchery, sex, drugs, food, overindulging in food, these things that give pleasure are inherently part of the sinful body, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like a lot of that plays into my idea of when I'm being like, oh, I'm such a piece of shit because I just wanted to lay on the couch and eat a tub of ice cream and like scroll on Instagram mindlessly. And that, a lot of that I think is from that social programming, be it in or out of religion, because a lot of religion infiltrates our like cultural narratives too about like how you should spend your time and all of that. But yeah.
What's your like spiritual, like, do you have like a specific practice you do?
So that's so interesting and what I wanted to talk about, because I never feel like I had a place where I just didn't do anything spiritually, but that was kind of part of the problem is like, I feel like I've always been searching for a specific spiritual guidebook or group to live by. So I was still trying, even when I was in college and even on my own, I was like, I should go back to church, And I don't even think that was necessarily misguided, because what I was searching for was this mooring of this belief in God, in this community, the central idea of like God and community and pursuit of a higher power and pursuit of, leveling oneself up, I guess. But I think that in the past several years, I've been like, okay, now I'm going to focus on like going to spiritual workshops and like camps and stuff like that. Okay, now I'm going to get into astrology. Now I'm going to get into meditation. Now I'm going to do it. And then I've always fallen off the bandwagon with it.
Right.
And part of that I've realized through therapy is because I have a lot of self-limiting beliefs that I am lazy, that I never finish anything, that I never follow through, that I can never keep up with my reading or my practice. And I get caught in that guilt shame spiral, right? Of like, damn, I was meditating for 10 days straight and now I've fallen off the wagon for 4 days and then I never do it again after that, right? And like a lot of that is stuff I'm trying to deprogram right now. But in the past few months, it's become a really integrative approach for me, where spirituality for me and connecting to God is about connecting to the things that bring me joy and that bring me peace. And some of those are really simple things for me, whether it's like baking something or painting something or sitting with my kids in the backyard with no phone, just like looking at bees or whatever. Like those are the things that bring me back to myself and this pure aspect of myself that I want to preserve and develop so that it seeps through into all the other areas of my life. So I guess that's my spiritual practice as of right now.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
The only thing I do consistently that I very rarely miss is I hit my knees in the morning and pray, and then night and pray, and then everything else is bonus. And I do the Hare Krishna. I started doing the Hare Krishna chanting because I wanted to meditate.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then I went to the TM thing, and they're like, we want $1,200. I'm like, go fuck yourself. I'm not paying you $1,200 for a chant. I'll be miserable for the rest of my life
I won't give up the
before
cash.
I pay for this Ponzi scheme.
Wait, what is that? What are you talking about?
TM?
No.
Transcendental meditation.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I don't want to, it's actually great.
TM.
Yeah, no,
funny
it's great.
Yeah,
It's
but then
great,
I bought a book about it, and I just learned everything I need from the book, and I started doing it. I'm sure there's probably so many TM people that are listening to this right now going, Abby, shut the fuck up. That's not how it goes. It's just a thing. But the person who I met wanted money for a mantra. I'm like, just give me the mantra.
Yeah, like I need it. Give it to me.
Yeah. And so I just started doing the Hare Krishna one because it's something that I grew up and I know how to do.
Of course.
And actually it makes me feel really good. Like as I'm saying the mantra over and over again, I can like feel like anxiety dissipating.
Sure.
I can feel like it's a good check. So I hit my knees in the morning, I do that, then everything else is bonus. But at the same time, I do lots of stuff. I work out, I do all that shit. I'm very much like in this like insane capitalist go-getter mindset right now. Maybe you can pull me back because you're into therapy. Maybe you can pull me. Maybe I'm going down a dark path right now, and I want to ask your opinion on this. I've soured on therapy.
Okay.
I think
What kind of therapy? Be specific. Talk therapy?
all of it.
Okay.
Talk therapy.
Talk therapy.
Talk
Okay.
therapy.
Okay. Okay,
So-
let's like this. Look, this is like my boyfriend's going to therapy right now, and I'm like, I could tell him because I'm pretty self-aware and I feel like I'm good at seeing this stuff in other people, where I'm like, yo, the reason that you react to me like this when I say this is because you're triggered, because your mom used to do this, this, and this, and like you need to process through that.
Yeah.
And he's like, what? No. And then of course now he's going through therapy, and he's like, yeah, dude, a lot of shit's coming up with my mom.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, so this is good because you
I know
need to.
you picked one thing.
There
Where I was
you
just
go.
like, what
See,
the
maybe
hell?
maybe
go.
it's just the
Okay.
wrong person.
But
Okay.
so I think that it's good for like if you in my personal opinion, I do think it's good for basic level processing when it's difficult for you to have opportunities to unpack shit that you don't get to talk about.
That's fair. Okay, so now
Say your thing.
devil's advocate. I think our society puts so much emphasis on healing. They're like, us men, we need to heal, we need to talk, and it's like almost overcorrected. Or I'm like, I don't need to heal all day. You know what I mean? Where I gotta go just handle my life, and that's gonna take care of 90% of the anxieties if I just keep promises to myself and just try and be a good person. That's gonna like deal with most of this shit. So maybe I'm souring. I don't know because everyone's like, dude, you should go to therapy. I've been to like 3 therapy sessions in my life, and everyone's like, you should do therapy. And I'm
One
like,
time therapy? One session?
one-on-one therapy.
Just one
I've
session,
done like
though?
a ton of group stuff though.
Okay.
I call 7 different people until one person co-signs my bad behavior.
There you go.
And I'm
And then
like,
you're like,
you're
yes,
right.
see, this is we're good. We're good.
And that's why I trust you. So for me, I started doing this thing called brain spotting though, because I had like problem areas in my life where I was like, dude, like I can't figure out some childhood trauma that connects to this, because that's the other problem, right?
Yeah.
Is like in talk therapy,
Yeah.
it's all, or in specific types of talk therapy, because there's definitely different kinds. So sorry to the therapist. We're really stepping on the toes of a lot of people in this episode.
Oh
but
no!
sorry to the therapist.
Keep in mind,
But-
I'm trying to. I'm not even talking shit. I'm
no.
just putting it out there to see if I'm open to changing my mind.
Well, what I'm saying is I don't want to represent therapy wrong but there are types of therapy where it's like, let's connect everything to your childhood trauma or whatever.
Right.
And there are some things where I'm like, bro, I can't find a specific traumatic event, which is why that I react this way when I do this.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can talk about it. I can't come up with anything.
Yeah.
I still have this problem. I don't want to be like this. You know, I don't want to communicate with my partner like this and scream at them when I get so stressed out and whatever. Or like, I don't want to have these hang-ups in this part of my life where I can't function because I freeze up and I'm having some sort of panic response, but I don't know why. So with brain spotting, it's kind of like EMDR. I don't know if you've heard about it, but like, yeah. So with brain spotting, basically like you're listening to this bilateral music that's going back and forth to either side of your brain. And while you're listening to it, you focus on, okay, you know, when you're talking about something like uncomfortable or traumatic and your eyes keep going to the same thing, like, you know, you'll keep looking over at the guitar while you're like talking to me or whatever. Yeah. So you basically focus on a point in the room where you feel the activation the strongest about, and it could be a thing, it could be an event like this one traumatic event, or it could be a general feeling. So like what I've been working on lately is feelings of like imposter syndrome around like career stuff or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you have certain thoughts that circulate around that, right? Like I'll never be good enough. I'll never finish that project. I never finish anything. So you focus on like those key things, focus on the spot, listen to music, and then you basically like meditate on that for like 45 minutes with someone helping to guide you. And the idea is it helps your brain like process through these like these abstract concepts that are really difficult to work through. And it's been fucking really helping. Yeah. So anyway, that's a totally different type of therapy that is like focused on.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll do that. I'll do that. That sounds awesome. One thing I've learned with imposter syndrome, this will cure you right now.
Thank you.
Is like I've experienced imposter syndrome with just like my business and stuff, where I'm just like, well, are they gonna find out that like we don't know what we're doing? But then I realized no one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
No one has any clue. Everyone's just kind of guessing. It's kind of nuts.
I think I get caught up in the shoulds though, you know, like just thinking with like art stuff of like, oh, the artists I've seen, for instance, like they are always going to galleries. Like I should be going to galleries. I should have more, you know, like that kind of stuff. I can relate to that.
When I found out Kendrick Lamar doesn't own a cell phone, I'm like, great, gotta get rid of my cell phone now.
Smash it on the ground right there. Exactly.
Like, I can't even go 1 minute without my fucking cell phone.
That's real imposter syndrome with like of being a spiritual person or like someone who's conscious, right? You're like, fuck, I'm not doing that. Well, then, I'm a piece of shit again, right? It always comes back to that kind of inner narrative. But, okay, that was a tangent. But where were
spiritual practices? So you said you
so I do my chanting. I hit my knees and pray twice a day, and everything else is like a bonus hobby exploration. Like that's the way I look at it. It's almost, I'll treat it almost like an indulgence, you know, where I'm not like, oh, I should do this. I'm just like, oh, this is like a fun thing I get to do.
How do you feel though if you miss like a chanting for a day or something?
Not that bad.
You don't?
No. I try to keep up with my prayers, and then like I used to go to these 12-step meetings. I mean, I still do all the time, but like when I first started going, I was like, I cannot miss it. Like I will not miss my meetings, and which is great because it worked and life's good. But now I'm like, I don't really care if I like miss it. It's like fine. Like I'm pretty like in tune with like how I feel, and I'm good enough to know that like if I'm feeling off, like I have the tools at my disposal to kind of course correct. And then when I have time on top of that, I'll always like indulge in new different spiritual ideas and discussions and listen to podcasts or YouTube videos of stuff like that. But I view that as like supplemental fun stuff.
Okay, I want to talk about three things. First, Jess, I want to hear what your spiritual practices are. I also want to hear about where all of us are at in terms of just like what we believe, like what we think about like the nature of things. Of course, none of us know much. But then, and then I
figured it all out.
I'm Mormon now.
Gone full circle.
So Jess, like kind of what are your spiritual, and then I'd also like to hear, and you could answer this in your question, please. When did you start, do you remember that moment when you were like, in that moment of being on that low vibration or just being on that like fuck that bullshit, when was the moment, if you remember, where you went, oh, I kind of miss that. Or like, oh, I kind of want that kind of thing in my life again.
Well, I'll say spiritual practices first because I have to kind of process the moment. You know, right now at this point in my life, I am not, we'll get into it more, but I'm like, I don't have like a specific spiritual belief at all. But I am enjoying, like, I think just the way that I was raised and then where I land now is like, I feel very connected to something spiritually, like whether it be God, I don't know. So for me, I did something similar with you where I'm like, I was trying to kind of figure out, I'm like, what I started to do was every week I would go to some sort of different religious place of worship, like whether it be like, you know, what different types of churches and temples. And I'm like, I'm just going to experiment every week and I'm going to see if something clicks. And nothing like clicked in the way that I was like, oh, I found my home here by any means. But I did feel good being involved in spirituality. But in recent days, what I've really realized about myself is what I need for spirituality is stillness. I'm not good at being still. Like my mind is always racing.
Welcome to the 21st century.
I know. And it's obviously that it's 10 times worse than because of social media and all these things, but it's like, I can't do it. And so I've really been working every day, whether it be meditating or literally just being completely still, like just sitting in the backyard and like letting the wind hit my face and just being still. And that's kind of where I started with it. And I try to do that every day and it helps so much. But then beyond that, kind of where I feel like I've landed is as far as God goes, I'm like, we're God. So I'm like, when I'm interacting with you and with my child and with my husband, I'm like, this is God.
Well, I'm Satan.
And you're the devil. No, but like I really try to, that's,
like the divine,
that's
like
what feels
divinity.
like my spiritual practice now, where I'm just like, I've been pretty good about like keeping the phone away and staying off Instagram a lot because I've found myself getting caught up in the humanity of that instead of just literally sitting and spending time with people. And I've been really trying in the past few months to just be and spend time with like the divine, which is the people that are in my life, or even if I'm just having a conversation, if I'm getting a coffee, like just trying to have a moment with like the barista. And it's just like there's like divinity here and trying to really soak in that energy. And that has felt really spiritual for me. And that feels like a practice that I feel like I can really step into every day because we're always interacting with each other.
Like David Sedaris says, everyone's got something interesting to
Everyone's got
share.
something interesting to share, but for real, you know? And then the question, when was that moment that I realized that I needed something? Probably two moments. One being after when I was still involved in the church, and then I was just like partying and like just having sex and just kind of doing my thing and feeling like I had to just zone out. You're like, whoa. I didn't realize that I was dealing with that. Like, I'm gonna have to take leave here. But in that place, I hit a point where I realized that I was really unhappy. And so I'm like, I need something spiritual again. And so I just kind of dove back into the church where I was already. Because
What point was this at?
That was like in my early 20s.
Okay.
Like 21, 22 probably.
Like right after you graduated or something?
But I was still like involved in the church, but I wasn't participating really. Even though I was there every week, I wasn't mentally participating. And then I just was like, I'm going to try to dive back and get involved in the church. Didn't go so well for me. That's when I really started to realize the issues that I had with it. And it was like, oh, probably because I was actually taking notice now for the first time. I was letting myself. And then once I stepped away from the church, I had to really deconstruct and like let myself be angry for a little while. And then probably about a year and a half ago, I was just having a conversation with Ember. She was asking me all these questions. And all of a sudden I kind of had this moment where I'm like, I feel really disconnected spiritually. I feel like I'm consumed, and that's why I bring up like Instagram, but I feel like I was just so consumed with like online chatter and no spiritual practice. And then I was listening to my daughter asking me questions about spirituality that I'm like,
Was that in 2020?
2020, yeah, 2021, 2020, yeah.
Yeah, because I was just thinking those were moments too, like just saturated by so much like
So much.
online stuff. So many of these like thought processes and relationships were all like really virtual and made up like during that time in so many ways. I think it left a lot of people feeling like spiraling.
Yeah,
and, like, what the fuck?
I felt like I had been like wrung out of any spiritual feeling at all. I just felt like every part of my body hurt from like looking down at my phone, just tense.
Right.
Too much. Just too much. No. When I say spirituality, I mean like the energy. Like you can just feel it between the divine between each other. Like I was wrung dry. And then all of a sudden when I'm having this little like 4-year-old or 5-year-old at the time asking me about God, I was like, what do I believe? Like, what am I doing right now? I'm just ignoring everything that is divine. And I'm just saturating myself with, I don't know, imagine like not real shit.
Yeah, imaginary. Yeah, straight
stuff that
up
just doesn't
made
even
up.
exist when I can like reach out and touch you guys, but I was just in my hole.
So what was the first, do you remember the first like attempt to be like, I'm going to do this spiritual thing?
It literally just started with, like, honestly, it's so stupid and simple, but just like turning my phone off and putting my phone away. Like I was taking breaks and just being like, okay, I have to, to a certain degree, turn something on for work, but I have my set hours and then I'm off.
Yeah.
And then I started to just reach out to more. I had noticed that I just had fully like not been reaching out to friends or family at all. I was just always by myself. Even once like mandates were lifted and like it wasn't the issue anymore. It was like I just got stuck there.
Yeah.
And so I just started reaching out to people and calling people. I never called anybody before, and just taking moments. And then, like I said, just honestly, just sitting outside.
Yeah.
I never left my home. I was indoors all the time. Like I started to go outside.
Yeah.
It's just simple and like it's so minimal, but I lost it.
But we're like hamsters on the hamster wheel, right? And then all of a sudden we're like, oh,
yeah,
I don't know. I
fully
step off the wheel.
lost sight of it. And I just went, oh, well, I don't believe in Jesus and God in this way anymore. And I just like let my brain turn that off completely. And that wasn't good for me either. Like, because I cut myself off from the divine, I think.
Abby, when did you notice like that you were like, wait a second, I'm like missing something?
Probably right before I got sober. Yeah. I was like, I was just unhappy. I couldn't figure out what was going on in my head and my life. I just felt very alone too. Like, I mean, I was kind of disconnected from my family, and I didn't feel like I had that many like deep connections with a lot of people, and I felt like there was just like a hole missing, and I was trying to fill the the God-shaped hole with drugs, alcohol, attention from stand-up and notoriety and all that shit, and it didn't make me feel happy. And so getting sober, I like felt kind of worse at first, because I'm like, now I have nothing, but then I slowly but surely started to feel better. And then where I'm at now with that is like I believe God's real. I believe whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? Like it sounds so basic to say agnostic, but my philosophy is whatever label I put on it doesn't really matter. It's not going to change. I'm like, the whole universe isn't going to change because I put a label on it, right? So I'm very much like, I live as if God's real because I know that makes me feel better, and which kind of reinforces my belief in whatever that is. And and my understanding of that is something that's always kind of evolving, and I'm trying to figure it out.
Why does it make you feel better?
What?
You said like, believe in God because like that makes me feel better. Like in what way?
It makes me, feel like it's something I can sort of tether like all my decisions to. It's like a guiding force. It makes me feel connected to everything and everybody. And I feel like it just makes the universe and everything make a little bit more sense if it's all connected to one thing.
Does it allow you maybe to, are you someone that struggles with like control? Like just like controlling the decisions for the outcomes of like your life, or like I'm gonna do this, do this, do this.
Yeah. I want all my shit and I want it right now. And I want money and I want everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does belief in God sometimes allow you to surrender like a little bit more to like the possibilities of if things don't go your way?
Yeah, 100%. No, yeah, 100%. God makes me like, it's just the idea, just anytime it's like, you know, you got my will and they got God's will. My friend gave me this analogy that I thought was so profound. Like in life, it's like my job is to row and God's job is to steer. And I just row and God steers, and I try and not to have too much attachment to scenarios in my head that I came up with that nobody promised me.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm just coming up with based on my best guess for what that is. And I've never been steered in the wrong way. It's like there's been moments where like, oh, this corner looks scary, or that water looks scary up ahead, or like this sucks in the moment, or like, oh, I'm cold here, but it always ends up in like a better place. And time after time where I can connect the dots looking backwards and things feel like they've always worked out, it further reinforces my belief.
Well, and I would say too that like sometimes even the outcomes, even like when you look back at it, you're like, wow, well that outcome fucking sucked. But I think if you do allow yourself to surrender, the good outcome is that you are growing and trusting more, right? And learning to like release more. Yeah. Even if the like objective life that you have around you is shit, you could still be like, see the perspective of how you have come as a person and how you've been changed.
Wait, say that one more time?
No, I was just thinking about like, you can basically like, look, there are some people whose lives, like the objective experiences in their life fucking suck.
Yep.
Right? You know, there's always those people where it's like, dude, my entire family got in a car crash and like all of my loved ones died at once.
Fuck, yeah.
Like, that's just shitty.
Yeah.
You know, you're probably not going to look back at that in 20 years now and be like, no, I understand.
Oh, it all works out. Yeah,
of
course.
But like, I think what you're talking about surrender and this idea of like sort of God steering, even if you're going through all this shitty stuff, you could still look back if you have kind of like allowed yourself to surrender and be like, I have grown so much in like my trust in myself and trust
1,000%. Well, also by surrendering, I realize how much control I actually do have over a lot of things, which oddly enough makes you feel like you have more control in life and you're okay with what you can't control.
Right.
It actually, it gives me a lot more clarity on those things where I can pursue something to the most and put everything I have into it, yet still surrender and be okay with the outcome. And that's the whole point of it.
Well, because like this is a cliche, but the only thing we can control is like our reactions to circumstances.
Exactly.
And even though that's a cliche, that's a really complicated concept.
Yeah, it's a cliche that like we'll never truly can understand.
Well, it's
like,
so powerful.
You'll spend your whole life trying to like really break that down.
Well, and it's so hard because it's like if you can only control your reaction, like no. And Gray and I argue about this because he's like, no, I can't help if I get like angry when someone fucking almost hits me and cuts me off in their car, right? It's because like pure fear in that moment. But like, imagine if you could get to you. I think you can get to the place where someone could be screaming in your face and be like, "Fuck you," and they could be totally in the wrong, and you could go, can't control 100%. How you feel about that, and I'm not gonna let myself get like emotionally dysregulated, and I just gotta keep doing me, which is like takes years of practice. But I do think we all do have the power to control our reactions and recognize what's in our control and the way we react to situations that will make our life like that much closer to bliss.
Absolutely. And you can't control if you want some opportunity and it's like Krishna said to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, like, you're entitled, paraphrasing, you're entitled to your labor, not the fruits of your labor. You're only entitled. That's the only thing you're entitled to is what you can do. You're not entitled to any of the results, and so you have to stay out of the results. But you're entitled to try as hard as you want.
That's pretty good.
That is very good.
Because, yeah, also if you get disappointed that you didn't get those fruits, then that will taint the entire labor process that you might have even enjoyed or grown from, right?
Exactly.
Like, interesting.
And you're thinking about the fruits. You're missing the moment.
Yeah.
You're missing the moment.
Exactly.
So what do you think about life?
Oh, sorry to cut you off, but my God is Joe Rogan. So
God, it's
whatever Joe Rogan says,
whatever
that's
Joe Rogan
my
says.
God. And I pray to Joe Rogan. I have a little mandala with his face, and I have all the other.
You do your
on your
mantras to
beads.
Joe?
Yeah. I got like my Joe prayers
For
and
sure.
And all that, and it's pretty good.
That's good.
It made my life a lot
And all
better.
you have to pay is to Spotify,
Right.
For that religion.
Yeah,
honestly.
exactly.
It's not that big of a cost.
And yeah, he said some questionable things, but every religion's has a bad past. You know, every religion's got something.
There's some dirt on Jesus. I know it.
I'm just waiting to find it.
I know it. I'm gonna figure it out.
Where I land. So, like I said, it makes me feel good to think that there is a God, that there is some sort of deity controlling everything. But I don't think about it often because I feel like it's not something that I'm ever going to, be able to prove or disprove or really figure out until I come face to face with my creator. Okay. But so that's not something that I honestly think about very often anymore for me, because again, I think that there's the trauma there too, where it's like it was was held to so closely by like my church, is it's like there is a God, he does it's so black and white. There's no like, well, maybe. So I don't really go there.
And also the idea of God,
right?
It's like this man figure.
It has to be this.
It's for sure a man.
It's 1,000% a man. There's no way. It is Joe Rogan.
No way, it's a fucking chick, dude.
He eats elk meat. He's often shirtless. But I think that for me too, like you were saying, I have then this certain perspective of who God is because of how I was raised, and that's hard for me to shake. So even when I try to think about God in a different form, it's still kind of this man in the sky and whatever. So for me, I like to think that there's a deity. I like to think that there's a God, but it's not something that I think about often. What I feel like my kind of religion, my faith has become is what I know here, which is human beings.
Which is hell.
Which is hell. No, for real though, it's human beings. And that's all that I have. Like I can sit here and think about a deity. I can sit here and think about like what happens afterwards. And trust me, I do. And I get so scared. But what I do know that I have is right here, and it's humans. And that's the only divine that I know that I can experience. So for me, that's become what kind of my focus has been faith-wise, is just existing with human beings, and like what that looks like spiritually would be like loving on each other.
I think you
honestly.
Practice what you preach too, because every time I'm around you, I feel like you're such a warm, present person every time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I'm glad that I can fake that. I'm glad I can fake it. No, that's all that I kind of land there because, and I literally bring this up literally every single time we talk about a religious episode, but it's always stuck out in my mind. And it was from an interview with Pete Holmes, whose podcast you were on. It was phenomenal. But he did an interview with Brian Regan, who's another comedian who everyone, amazing, but everyone assumes he's a Christian because he's like quote unquote clean, right? Yeah. And so Pete asked him, like, what do you believe?
What do you mean clean?
Like
he doesn't swear.
He doesn't swear. He doesn't do dirty jokes or whatnot.
Like he doesn't eat pork. What are we talking about?
What do you mean clean? No, but he asked him, you know, what do you believe about God? And Brian said, I don't typically like to answer that because I believe something today, but tomorrow I could read something that changes everything. So that's kind of how I feel, as in the sense of
I can get behind that.
Right,
Yep.
what God is. I'm like, I kind of have my feelings right now, but tomorrow they might change, and sometimes they do. But human beings I have here. So from one of my favorite, like, Derek Walcott poems, I've just been trying to live spiritually on a plane that is give wine, give bread, give back your heart to itself. Like, sit and feast on the life that you have. Like, that's it. And so when I have these conversations about like God and I enjoy having them, I'm like, I don't think about that as much as I do just human existence and love here. And I guess I'll find out after. I don't know.
When you envision death, what do you, like, if you had to put your money on it, what's it going to be like?
I think that I think that we won't know. I have this feeling that like we die and our energy goes elsewhere, and maybe our energy is somewhat cognizant, but probably not.
Like
So I
floating
just-
somewhere, or like doing stuff.
Floating, connecting
One
to
thing
something.
I know for sure isn't going to happen when I die is like, I'm not going to die and I'm going to wake up and there's going to be some guy going, you idiot, wasted your time praying. That's not real, you idiot.
It's true,
You were
though.
all wasted your time being nice to people and praying and now you're dead. You know?
It's true though. No,
It's
and
better
that's
to be happy than to be right.
It's true.
It's so true. And that's the thing. And that's kind of, we were talking about at the top of the episode where I'm like, I used to feel kind of like triggered by people who were participating in certain religious practices just because they were harmful for me growing up. But I'm like, if you're not hurting anyone and that's what brings you peace and serenity and joy here and helps you love on other people here, I'm all for it. But I think that's all that we have is just loving on people in this plane. And then maybe we'll find out at some point after we die, and maybe we'll be cognizant and maybe we won't. Where do you land now? I have no idea where you land now. We haven't talked about it in a minute.
No, I mean, I think first of all, to like, where I am at just with different religions in general is I'm like, and no insult to anyone, but like, I get so infuriated right now with like some of my family members or friends where they're like, no, like I think that this is what it is. And I'm like, bro, you have no fucking, like we literally have nothing to go off of.
No.
Like that is where I'm at. Where like when Christians are just like, no, like I know there's a God and like Jesus died for me. I'm like, okay, like that's fine. You can believe that. Like, but to think that that's like the ultimate truth, the objective truth is really kind of like mind-boggling to me, where I'm just kind of like, I don't get how you could say that. That's really haughty or like lofty and like the limitedness of our human understanding, which is really funny because I was always taught that humans have such limited understanding, yet all the humans around me were telling me that they like understood what was to come, you know, based on their interpretation of the Bible, where I was like, these two don't align.
That's the very
Right.
Christian trope of like, we'll never, they
humans
use
are idiots.
We'll never
God is-
understand God when you ask a question that's kind of like, well, what do you mean by this? It's like, well, we'll never understand God,
Right.
but also like, I know.
Well, no, my
There's-
parents just taught me that like that humans inherently are like limited in our understanding
Yeah.
of the divine, which I
It's-
totally
it's true.
agree
Like,
with.
if a
But
cat is in a room, like the cat doesn't know there's Wi-Fi in the room,
right.
and we're like one level above
Right.
that.
No, so like I agreed them on that point, but then it would just sort of be like, but God gives us the answers. But then I'm like, wait, but with your human understanding, you're determining that this book was written by God and that like your interpretation of this book is the way that God intended it. Like there's a lot of big assumptions being made there, which I'm not really into, but I'm fine if you are. So that's where I'm actually at the point where I'm like, I really don't give a fuck if people are like super like heavy into their religions. Like it bugs me sometimes where I just like roll my eyes at like, I'm just like, okay, I think that's kind of dumb, but it really like doesn't bother me, and I'm all for it. And
Have
want
you had
people to
any
do-
full circle moments?
I mean, Yeah, I've had moments. I don't think I've ever fully like stepped away, but like definitely in the past few years, like I think this is what. So like I got a tattoo of like a rosary thing, which the rosary is just because it's cute and Nicole Richie did it. But people are like, why would you get a cross? You know, if you like always talk about like your Christian upbringing. And I'm like, dude, I don't think people understand. Like, I love the Bible. I'm very knowledgeable of it. I love reading it. I feel like I get so much spiritual insight into myself, into like this history of the past of our culture and our world, and like where people stood on things and how they did things, and how much of that truth transcends through time. You know, like my favorite verse ever is from Ecclesiastes, and it says something to the effect of like, what has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun. And there's so many passages in the Bible like that I'm like, boom, yes, like this is eternal truth. This is eternal truth of our existence as humans. And that's what this book is about like human the arc of human existence. And I find that so incredibly powerful. And I find like the story of Jesus really powerful too, of this, but as this, template for this idea of like self-sacrifice and this idea of like pure compassionate love for people who don't deserve it. And I think that that's so beautiful if we can actually put that into effect in our life with people who are anti-maskers, with people who are anti-abortionists, with the people, all these people who fucking piss us off and we want them to go to hell. If we can have that Jesus Christ-like love of modeling, like I would lay down my life for you. I'd sacrifice myself for you, even though I think you're a piece of shit, because I care about who you are. Like,
exactly.
So, but where I'm at in just terms of spirituality stuff, like Gray and I were tripping out the other night. We were so high, and I was just like, bro, because I'm so into like herbalism stuff. I'm like, dude, the fact that on this planet we have all of these plants that can heal every single part of our body. Yeah. Like really, like there are specific plants that will heal your liver, that will heal this part of your body, that will heal your heartburn, that will heal like literally. And we don't utilize fucking any of it, of course, because it doesn't make money. But like there are these things on the earth around us, even parts of other animals that you can eat to heal this part of yourself, that can heal every part of your body. That's so fucking crazy. We have plants on this earth that will shift our consciousness so we can see into these divine planes. Like, yo, this earth was like made for us, not in the weird capitalist sense where it's like, yeah, it's made for me, I'm gonna like take over everything. But like, no, it's like this earth was designed as this like oasis for us as humans, like with our bodies and with the animals around us, all in fucking perfect harmony.
Yeah, it's so...
Unless it's a simulation.
This is totally off topic, but like humans are so arrogant that like everything's evolved together in this natural way for millions and millions and millions of years. Right. And then people are like, well, no, we really figured it out in the last 50. We're like, let's manufacture food, take out all the nutrients. Like, that's the way to do it.
Right. Well, it is the way to do it to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if you want to, but anyway, yeah. But like...
whole other podcast right there.
Yeah, but it's just like, it blows my mind where I'm like, wow. And it comes back to that like Christian upbringing part of me where I'm like, whoa, things are so made in such divine harmony for our existence here on earth. And it's so cool. And I'm in constant awe of it. And the more that I get back into these rhythms of like you were talking about the lunar cycles, about the changes in the seasons, about the way that we're supposed to interact with our food and the animals that we keep and the water we keep, and all of these things are in such divine harmony if we allow them to be. And we have strayed so far from the Lord's path.
No.
We have strayed far from God's good graces. Let me tell you. And again, that's another podcast. But it just amazes me. So I think that that's just where I'm at. And I'm not at the point where I'm like, I just feel like I've moved on beyond the like, fuck this or fuck that. The only thing that I feel fuck this or fuck that about is like anyone claiming to have like all the right answers.
Sure. Yeah, if they're not Joe Rogan.
Right. If they're not Joe Rogan.
Or they're Joe Rogan. Or Bekah.
And we're back. True.
So, but yeah. So, life, guys. Am I right?
Yeah, it's all just
one more question. Like, what advice would you give to someone who is like in the thick of that, like resentment or bitterness, whether it be towards the church or maybe even just like I feel like it's all intertwined, like their upbringing with their family or something, where they're just in that point where they're like, fuck all of that.
Yeah.
What do you have any soothing words of wisdom to kind of offer, or advice kind of coming out a bit on the other side?
Yeah, I think so. I would say to that person, you don't know everything, right? You don't know everything. You're not God. Just be open to the idea of there's something out there to make you happy, whether that's just, I would say if you're in that like bitter, resentful phase, don't even like pursue happiness just a little bit, and then just pursue a journey. And then when you're on that journey, but you don't want to be stuck in this place where you're just bitter and angry, because that's not good for you or anybody. It doesn't matter. And also the idea of like, it doesn't matter if you're right, just try and be happy. You know what I mean? And try and just start a journey, and that journey is going to lead you to wherever you need to end up spiritually or mentally.
Seeking fulfillment, like something that truly fulfills you.
Seek fulfillment and seek purpose. And by seeking fulfillment and purpose, you're going to need, if you're trying to live a big life or live a happy life, an abundant life with a lot of friends, you're going to need a lot of assistance on the way. Like, you can't do this shit alone. Like, you have to have people around you and some sort of internal motivation. And you're going to have to experiment and read and try a lot of different things to when you're on your journey.
I would say if you're in that state of like bitterness, I think it's important to let yourself feel that. I wouldn't shame yourself into feeling like you don't have the right to feel angry and resentful. I think it's okay to feel that way. But after a certain amount of time, I would say start to question, is this bitterness and anger really making you feel better? Do you want to stay here? Or are you just letting whatever trauma your past religion had on you continue to have a hold on you?
And part of your identity.
Yep.
Right.
Because if you're just sitting in your bitterness, it means it's still controlling you. So to really get away from that, echoing what you said, Abby, is just like pursuing, maybe you don't want to pursue faith. Maybe you don't want to pursue anything that has anything to do with God, but pursue something that brings you peace.
Yeah.
And it'll come eventually.
There's a lot of people that are like, quote unquote, too smart to be happy. Like, they wear their anger and bitterness as a badge of honor, when it's like, is that smart to be angry all the time? Like, I don't think you're smarter than, so you can't, obviously you want to be happy. So why can't you figure that out then? If you're so smart, how come you can't figure out how to be happy?
Yeah. Again, all we know, the only thing we know is that we have right now. So why waste it in resentment? Again, let yourself feel it.
Yep.
I think it's important to process it, but this is all we know that we got. So I think it's important to,
I think, stuff it down and hit some weights, baby.
Therapy. Fuck therapy.
just stuff all your resentment and anger down, let it boil over until one day you absolutely lose your fucking mind. That's what I think.
I think like just remembering kind of in terms of both of what you were saying is like just remembering like we all want to feel connected, right? We want to feel connected to something, to someone. And remembering that in the way that you give grace to others and in giving grace to yourself. I was like driving. I've just been thinking about that a lot lately, because with this couples therapy stuff, they're talking about like when you're at a disconnect, it doesn't matter like whether it's about him not coming home when he said he would, or about her cheating or whatever. It all comes down to like you're both longing to feel connected and you don't know how, and you're at an impasse and it sucks and it's making you feel frustrated. And yesterday I was just like driving and I saw this girl on the side of the road and her boyfriend was driving. I'm assuming it was her boyfriend, and she was just fucking screaming into the car. You know, she was so in that moment where she was just like, fuck you, you know, like, and I was like, oh girl, I've been there. I know that feeling of being so out of control and so mad and so untethered. You just don't know. You don't even fucking care you're in a public place. Fuck who sees me screaming. But anyway, I just like literally, I was like, damn, okay, this is a shift in thinking. I looked at her and I was like, wow, like she wants to feel like connected to him in this moment. And she's so far away from that and is so frustrated being there. And I was like, damn, okay, look at my therapy perspective shift. But just like remembering that for people, like even the person who's being a fucking dick at the airport, like, you know, whatever, all those people, it's like, damn, they're going through something. They don't even know how to connect the dots in their own head, and just having grace for yourself and the people around you going through all that shit. So, but Abby, thank you so much for joining us. What a wonderful conversation.
Thanks so much for
vulnerable and
having
open.
me.
Okay.
What do you have to plug?
Do you have any dates coming up that people can see your stand up? Anything to plug?
Dates coming up. I'm going to be in New York for the month of June.
Ooh.
Stand up all over the place. I might be in Canada the first week of June. So I don't have the exact dates on anything right now, but just find me on social, and I post all of my shows, my story and everything, and I'd love for everyone to come out and check it out.
Cool.
We love you,
socials.
Abby.
What are your socials?
Oh, yeah, the socials.
At Abby Roberge, ABBYROBERGE.
Abby, thank you so much.
I'll
Thank
plug
you, Abby.
everything. Thank you so much. Just so nice seeing you girls.
Oh, we love you.
Both just somehow continue to be more attractive and cool every single day.
Thank you so much.
It's awesome to be here.
Chat soon.
We'll chat soon, broads.